tonight's event is about content, as you might have noticed from the sign-up process and the big slide behind me. But and we're going to talk to Nick. Now, Nick has an amazing background in content, working with Spark in New Zealand, which is kind of like the Telstra equivalent of in Australia, in creating their content lab, working with NAB, and now working with ActivePipe, which is last year alone they grew by I think 150% or so. So it is really amazing to have the opportunity to have a detailed chat with someone who has been in the content space for so long, and get a little bit of insight. So make sure you have your notepads out. We got maybe 2 or 3 slides. They're really not a lot of slides, but make sure you got your notepads out, and there's going to be plenty of insight flying around. So please just help me welcome Nick. Please, sir. All right, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, absolute pleasure. Look, I did an intro. I'm not very good at intros, but would you be able to tell us a little bit about yourself? Like what's your background and how did you get here?
Yeah, sure. So my background's corporate. So I started off working for ANZ over in Docklands. Spent 3 years as a marketing coordinator. In my opinion, the very best environment to really learn and cut your teeth. So they start you out running execution, so you do the DM channel, then you learn the SMS channel, EDM channel and whatnot. So my background was always focused on execution. After a few years, I moved up to a manager's role, and I was really focused around different segmentation. So at ANZ they had young money, so basically affluent under 25s, professional executives, and also just the straight affluent market. So we talk to our customers very differently. So that was kind of my first taste of segmentation and creating that content to really resonate with an audience. From then I moved back to New Zealand, and I spent a year working for Spark. So Spark is New Zealand's version of Telstra, New Zealand's biggest telco, but it's also a very similar business model to Telstra here, where it's a tech co. So my role there was to really sell business enabling products to New Zealand small business from any size, from a small business one-man operator to the largest enterprise clients such as the Westpacs of the world. When at Spark, that was kind of my first taste of real core content. So my role was to really develop our content program and to build that out to really create what we called moments of magic for our customers. So we didn't sell to our customers, we sold to our customer's customer. So an example of that would be we would put Wi-Fi in the Skybus. But the story we would tell wasn't about putting Wi-Fi so you could check your Facebook. It was someone that's flown from China, they could FaceTime their parents as soon as they landed to let them know they're safe. So it was really putting the customer's customer first. So that was a fantastic experience. Had a lot of time building out various programs of work, had some great partners, and built a full new website, which cost an arm and a leg. So after that, I moved back from New Zealand back to Australia, and I kind of wanted to change. I wanted to move away from the corporate environment, so I went out on sort of a freelance contract. Was lucky enough to land a role at the Melbourne Rebels as their head of marketing. So that was all around bringing the fans closer and bringing the fans into the inner sanctum. The Melbourne Rebels were going through a period of turmoil, they still are, but it was about bringing those fans back and creating that fan engagement. We did that through content. So we hired digital marketers, we hired video producers, we hired content writers, and we told the stories of the players because they are the people that make up the club. So from then I went out to agency land, and I worked for an agency called 10 Feet Tall, and I ran a large campaign for Mount Hotham Ski Field, which is still going, True Spirit of Alpine Australia. You see anything like that? So that was awesome too. And then I went full agency and I moved to Clemenger. So completely flip side from the corporate world, had a great time at Clemenger. And I went there because I had a role at NAB in the pipeline, and they were NAB's creative agency, so I wanted to build those relationships, really get a taste of agency side. So at Clemenger I was a senior social account manager, so I worked through all the CUB brands. It was more around relationship management and learning about how to create creative that cuts through the audience. From then I moved to NAB, and I was in the sort of the youth segment as well, so back to segmentation. So we create a lot of content for our millennials. how do we educate and inspire customers to basically bank with NAB through content. So that was also a great role, and now lucky enough to have moved to ActivePipe. So a little bit about ActivePipe. ActivePipe's an email marketing platform. You imagine a MailChimp, Pardot, Marketo. It's very laboursome to create an email. It usually takes a couple of hours depending on experience. With our platform and our editor, it's literally drag and drop. You can build an email in seconds. The beauty of that is we have integrations with all the biggest CRMs in Australia, particularly around property. So our core audience is real estate offices and the biggest brands in Australia, so the Ray Whites, the LJ Hooker. Where we create our amazing customer experiences, an agent can pull for a property feed directly from their CRM, and they can build an email in minutes. But what they can do is they can set various parameters in the back of that email template. So when they pull through those properties, they can serve personalised content to anyone in their database. So imagine you build an email, you pull through a local sold report, so you want to show them properties that have sold in a radius of their property, and you send it out to 10,000 people in their database. That's 10,000 individual, fully personalised emails in minutes. So we're having some great success. We've got our head offices based in Melbourne. We have an office in London, an office in Austin, Texas, a sales team in Canberra, and also a support team in the Philippines. So at this point, we juggle 3 geographies, which is a challenge and a very exciting challenge. But we do that via content marketing. So content marketing is our key pillar of our marketing execution. We also run a lot of lead gen and social campaigns, but really it all comes down to content marketing.
Awesome. Right, so very nice segue into content. What are the, maybe just briefly if you could tell us, what are the main areas that you're right now focusing on when it comes to content on ActivePipe?
So we predominantly play in the thought leadership space. We want to position ourselves as experts. We want to position our executives as experts as well. And we want to create that content that adds value and can educate. So we have a number of different pillars which I can talk to shortly, and a number of different roles. One, where we find content works really well is to drive our customers down the path to purchase or across the customer journey. We know various stages they engage in, and we can play up to that content to drive them down, and then we can validate with that content with our social proof. So it works really well. I have a full content engine in my team, and our major focus at this point is distribution and talking to the right people, because we don't do mass marketing. I want to sell our product to real estate agents and principals. So I don't do radio, I don't do TV because I don't need to, because I know a niche audience that I want to talk to. Okay. So our content allows us to do that because we can talk around very bespoke topics and talk really directly to our customers.
Yep, gotcha. Okay, so main focus is becoming an authority in this space. Now, one of the things that you've mentioned before is you've talked about content funnel, right? So I think it's a good starting point of maybe just defining, a lot of people have heard of sales funnel or, a funnel in general. How would you define a content, what is a content funnel?
Well, this is my content funnel that we have at ActivePipe, and we use this funnel as almost a briefing checklist as well. So when I brief a piece of content to my content team, they follow this as a checklist. So they know we have a number of different themes we might talk to. We might talk to technology, we might talk to marketing, we might talk to innovation. What I call reactive market context is there's only so many things you can talk about to be topical. So reactive market context for us is something that's topical in the market. So an example may be the AFL Grand Final. We know it's very topical, we know people are engaging with that topic, but then how do you have an ActivePipe layer over that? So an example would be, for the AFL Grand Final, think about all the stats. There's so much stats, and then basically after that game, all the analysts will look at those stats and they'll monitor all the performance of every player, and they'll take that performance and they'll glean learnings off that, and then they'll improve. So the slant we would take on that is analysing your data to make better business decisions. So we'd weave ActivePipe into that, so then we can be part of the conversation. Personas is probably the most important part. It's who you're trying to talk to and why. The content role, is it to inspire, is it to educate? What's the role of that content and why are you doing that? Our substantiation is, why is ActivePipe talking about this? We can talk about technology, we can talk about email marketing, we can talk about email marketing automation. Things we can't talk about is social media, for example. So that's when we bring our partners in, such as Tiger Pistol, who's our social and digital agency, and then they will guest write or they'll be contributors to our blogs, again, to give us that authority in the space. Distribution is probably the most important thing, and it's the thing that we, in all honesty, lack on, which we're trying to change now, because there's no point of doing all this content if you don't have a distribution plan to talk to the right people about the right thing. And ultimately, tracking and reporting, there's no point doing anything if you don't know if it's working, if you don't know who's engaging with it, and if you're not scoring to make learnings off the back of it.
Gotcha.
So this is my content funnel. They can differ depending on your different roles of content. Really for us, this is all our thought leadership funnel. So this is what we use on a daily basis.
Gotcha. Okay. Now I got plenty of questions to go through with the funnel, but how does the planning work at ActivePipe? So you have your funnel, right? Which is the process that you go through. For example, when it comes to you talk about the reactive marketing component where something is coming up. Is there a meeting? Is there a how does that process look like?
So we have a fortnightly sprint with my content team where we talk about what's topical in the industry, what's topical about in the world, and then we basically brainstorm a series of content themes or pieces of content. I get my team to go away and think about those things, and they propose 6 to 10 topics for the next fortnight, and then we basically cut down that list depending on what we've talked about in the past or more recently, who we've talked from. So all our content is written from a ActivePipe employee, if it's myself, if it's our CEO, if it's our CRO, if it's our head of sales, whoever's the right fit. So it's a balancing act as well. We call it a compass session, and it's to make sure we're on the right direction. With a compass session.
Okay.
Just to make sure we're on the right direction.
Right.
So we always plan ahead, and we plan on what's our distribution point. So one of the main things we do as well is we skip forward to distribution when we plan, because we have a number of different email streams that go out to all our customers across lead gen, retention, win back, and ultimately awareness. So we need to know how that's all going to fit together, again going back to our distribution strategy and what we want to amplify and where. So we plan very heavily.
So does that mean that every fortnight you got 6 to 10 pieces? Do all those 6 to 10 pieces get published, or you cut down further?
No.
How many pieces gets published a fortnight?
It depends, and again it's going back to our focus on distribution. Our problem was we were creating too much content. We were content heavy, and we weren't doing our content justice in distribution. So imagine you invest all the time and resources to create a piece of content, and then you may post it organically and you'll get very limited reach. It's almost a waste of optimization. So we've scaled back. So at this point we probably do anywhere from 3 to 5 pieces a fortnight. And again, it goes into those distribution points or those email streams we run. So it all depends on what's happening and what's available. Sometimes we cache a lot of content as well, and we have it up our sleeve for the right fit. We try to theme our content as well. This month's edition's like spring. So, in real estate particularly, spring's a big month.
Spring.
Yeah, so, spring mortgages, all the banks pour millions of dollars into their advertising. So spring's quite a topical thing for us. So we've got a lot of content up our sleeve that can fall into that vertical.
Right, okay, and that they get pushed out at that point. That's such an interesting point, because I think a lot of companies go through and talk about content, and then they produce a lot. And some of the big names in the industry also talk about it. I think one of the people that a lot of people quote when it comes to content is Gary Vee, right? Where has just huge amount of content being pushed out at every point, but that was like a weak spot, not a weak spot, was something that wasn't working for you guys. So what? And I think we're kind of jumping ahead now, but what are you guys doing now for distributing that content better compared to before? You mentioned email lists.
Yes, so we have 4 email streams that go out. We're an email marketing platform. We can build beautiful content-led emails very easily, so we're in a very privileged position. So we have an email called the pipeline. It's a retention play. It goes out to every one of our existing customers, and we talk about ourselves as a business that's moving forward, being innovative. We talk about the industry because, again, we want our customers to think about us as industry experts. We want to give them security. We know what we're doing, so they'll never leave. So it's a retention play. We also run a win-back campaign. So anyone that's churned through our pipeline or who is basically hasn't been a completed sale. So we may have a demo, but we don't convert to a selling customer. So we have an email stream which goes to them. We talk very explicitly. We know that people may churn for price, so we write articles around ROI and understanding the value of technology and seeing technology as not a cost but an investment in your business. And that attempts out, to bring our customers back in, because again, we want them to think this company's doing good stuff. Maybe I should give them another go. We also have another stream that we're just implementing now is a subscription model. We give away our content for free. I think that's a fundamentally flawed model because we may run an article on a affiliates distribution partner and then we drive all these leads to our website, but they're unidentified leads. They can read every piece of content and glean every learning for free. We don't even try to get something in exchange, which should be an email address. If we can pull in that email address, then we can start to nurture and we can pull those leads into the pipeline and hopefully create a sales opportunity. The other major stream that we've implemented now is for our C-suite audience. So particularly in America, our focus is on our large-scale enterprise agreements. So what we do is we have a database of every person we have a conversation with from a corporate level, and we nurture them very differently. So we have another stream of content that goes to them, and we talk in a C-suite language. We talk about cost out, we talk about business growth, we talk about building a business and culture and empowerment. So every one of those streams has different language and different themes and different topics, because again, we know it goes back to our personas, so we can relate to our audience. Our corporate stream is brand awareness and ultimately substantiation. We want to position our executives and our sales executives as these industry leaders, so when people meet with them, they're more likely to have a positive conversation, and they're much more apprehensive when they don't know who we are. But when they see our content and they see us as industry leaders, they're much more open-minded about having a sales conversation, which we can progress much further. The other reason we use our C-suite stream is the gestation period from an enterprise agreement is very long. It could be anywhere from 2 to 3 months because we're talking about large enterprise agreements. We know that our persona at a C-suite level is the CEO, the CTO, and the CMO. We know that they can't make a decision without the three of them. We call it the triangle of influence. And particularly in the US, the CEO may be in a different state or even a different country, and he needs a meeting with the CMO. It might take 2 weeks. Then he needs a meeting with the CTO, and then one of them's on holiday, and all of a sudden you've lost 6 weeks. So we use content to continue to position ourselves in front of mind and just to continue the conversation almost as well, because we want them to always think, oh shit, I need to get back to those ActivePipe guys, I need to progress that meeting. We find it works really well.
Right, it's amazing how you have to take care of all the different pieces of even one company and look at it as a whole account rather than the visual leads. Look, I want to move into, just after this last question, I want to move into a strategy and what, like, if you wanted to approach a company, how would you put a content strategy in place? But you've talked about right now when you were saying about there are people who you're focusing content on when it comes to retention, right, further down the funnel. You might be or the buyer journey. You might be focusing on generating leads. You might be focusing on somewhere in the middle of activating and converting those into customers. How do you decide at what point on what to concentrate? Because sometimes, a lot of people say, you got to look at your buyer's journey and you got to produce content for that. And that's exactly what you were saying, that you go ahead and produce content for retention, right? It can be very overwhelming to look at the whole buyer's journey and start producing content for all of that. How do you prioritize where to start focusing at different points of time?
It's a difficult question to answer. It depends on every business. We started with social proof. So we started at the farthest end of our funnel, which is validation. So we use case studies, we use testimonials, because ultimately if someone's at the end of that buying decision or on the fence, they see a case study, they look for someone who is being successful, that's their competitor, and how they're being successful via ActivePipe, and then it almost pushes them over the line. it can play on a number of different roles. It's really what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to create brand awareness? Are you trying to drive leads down your pipeline? Are you trying to convert? It depends on every different business. So it's a tricky one to answer, but
Gotcha.
you really need to look at your numbers as well. Are you converting? What's your conversion rate across your different stages in your pipeline as well? And that's those little pockets of opportunity where really you need to invest your time and energy.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Let's say, just maybe actually show of hands, how many people have a company of their own here that they're running? Okay. And awesome. How many people want to put like a content strategy in place? You might not have your own company, but at the current company that you're on, you want to put a content strategy in place for your own, for the company. Okay. All right. Awesome. So I'm a new company, right? And I want to create a content strategy for my business. Where do I start?
I think my approach would be to look at a funnel. So start to think about your funnel and start to think the why. At every stage, why am I doing this? So what does your business do? What are you trying to sell? Like what value can you add from educating or inspiring your customers? So what are your themes? Like if you're a retail business, you can talk about retail, If you're a technology company, you can talk about technology and innovation. Find out what's your key theme and why you should be talking in that audience. What's going to give you authority in that space. Secondly, look at your personas. Who are you trying to talk to? What do you hope to achieve from talking to them? There's no point of writing content to the mass audiences if you're not trying to sell to the mass audiences. Find out who your personas are and your key audience are and start to talk to them in a tone and style that's going to resonate. Think about what role that content needs to play. Are you trying to educate and position yourselves as a thought leader? Are you trying to sell? Are you trying to create efficiencies in your business? It all comes down to the role you want your content to play and why. You can start really basically. I know people that do it themselves for their own one-man band, and they talk about in their business and they position themselves as someone that can exchange, value, I think. Think about your distribution. How are you going to get it out to your customers? Why will they care? Why will they want to read it? And then always track it. Like, there's no point doing it if you're not tracking and you're not knowing what works. There's various degrees of tracking and reporting that you can look into, going from just checking your social engagement to a full lead scoring model. So it depends what works for you. Start small and just start to build that momentum because you need to start growing your audience organically. Without that organic audience, you'll have nothing because people just won't care.
Gotcha. Right. And maybe on that point, I want to see if anybody has a question about strategy that you want to maybe dive in. There were a couple of points that Nick mentioned. Are there any questions on what Nick just said? I'm going to take that as a no. All right. You talked about efficiency, right? So it's interesting that a lot of people, when you talk about content, the first thing that comes to mind is awareness, and before converting into a paying customer, right? But you even talked about efficiency and retention. How is that different from generating leads and capturing leads?
So we have a number of different internal nurture programs. So we can create brand awareness, we can drive our leads to our sales team, but unless they're actually selling the product, are we wasting our time? To an extent, yes. So we have a number of different content-led nurture programs internally. So imagine you fill out an inquiry form. You'll get an automated email saying, thanks for your inquiry, a member of our staff will be in touch soon. As soon as you book a demo with us, you run into a content journey. You'll receive a number of different emails based off time periods. We know our sort of demo book to demo completed is about 7 or 8 days, so we time code it after 24 or 48 hours. So thanks for your inquiry, here's what to expect during a demo. And then the next one is, here's what you can do with our platform. So we already nurture and educate before they even get to that demo stage, so when they become to that demo, they're a warm lead. So that's how we create our efficiencies and our optimization internally, because we want to give our sales team all the opportunity to actually have a positive selling conversation, even before the customer has any experience of the actual UX or the product. We have a number of other streams we run as well. We know that if you've had a demo, there's a sales cycle to actually making a decision. So we push a lot of content of why this is a good investment for your business. Here's some value you can see out of it. And we use our social proof a lot there as well, because we want them to think this is something I need to do. here's why, here's someone who's my direct competitor using the platform and seeing value.
Gotcha.
So again, it's about creating those efficiencies. When you get a lead, how do you use content to actually get the most out of that lead?
Right, okay. And when it comes to content, right, there are obviously different types of content. What is it that has been working for ActivePipe? There's obviously video, there is audio now. A lot of people are talking about audio, and there's the written form. What are the forms that are working really well?
So we use content in a number of ways. We predominantly do long form written content, so blogs and articles, really thought leadership led content. We have our video case studies that work really well. Again, that substantiation point. For our social lead gen, 4 to 6 second short, sharp, GIF style videos, because we really want to drive those, pull those leads into the pipeline, so then we can nurture and educate before they even come to a sales lead. So we have a number of different hooks and pieces we use. We run a series of content-led digital advertising as well. So we know across our website, our website's set up like our path to purchase. We have our brand section, which is our brand awareness. We have our products, we have our pricing, we have our case studies, which is our social proof, and then we have our blogs and also our product features, which is our attention. So if you land at a different stage of that website, we remarket to you with different content-led messages. So we want to pull you back into that pipeline to another stage of the website so we can educate you down that funnel.
Right. So you basically track somebody who just visited a website, and if they become an identified lead, then you feed them other. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
So in simplicity, we know that people come to our website organically. So we're lucky because every email a client sends from us has powered by ActivePipe in the bottom. So imagine real estate agents game each other. If you're Ray White Paran, I'm LJ Hooker Paran, we're on each other's lists. Yep. So if I send an email from ActivePipe, you receive it and you go, what's this ActivePipe? You Google it, organic traffic. So perfect. So instantly, as soon as you hit our website, we serve you a product-led message. And then if you engage with that product-led message, you get a pricing-led message. And then if you come back to our website again, or you engage with that piece of content, you get a social proof message. So again, we're moving you down the path to purchase. And then we hit you with a hard call to action. Because we know that you're a nurtured lead and you're already been receptive to our content. So when our sales team call, the first question they ask is, do you know what ActivePipe is? And 9 times out of 10 they say yes, because we know that they've been engaging. We also know that if we lead score and we track, if we have a qualified lead where we have their data and their information, we can track them down those different stages of that path to purchase. So my sales team know what they've been doing, so they can tailor their conversation accordingly. They know if they've looked at the pricing page 4 times, they're having doubts about the price or the value of it. So when they tailor their conversation accordingly. So we're giving our sales team conversation tools without the customer even knowing. So when you pick up the phone, you can tailor your conversation, which creates that really, unique, personalised experience for our customer, and it leads to sales value.
Gotcha. Now, I want to talk about lead scoring. Just in case somebody might not be familiar with the term. Do you want to, or I'll just quickly explain that. You basically put a value on an email address based on the interaction that they had with the emails you've sent to them, based on the content they've seen, number of times that they visited your website. On lead scoring and bringing lead scoring content together, what have you found that was really difficult to make your lead scoring work as efficiently as you wanted to?
Unidentified leads coming from various channels. Like if we send an email to someone and they engage with a piece of content, we know who they are. We don't know who they are if they come from Facebook, if they come from LinkedIn, if they see a digital banner and they come through that channel. So the hardest thing for lead scoring is identification. No one's done it well yet where they can track. Adobe tried with the Adobe umbrella, so you can create that umbrella, unique identifier. So we get all this unidentified traffic. 9 times out of 10 it will be customers we already have in our database, we just don't know. So that's where lead scoring fell over for us. We know that if people are engaging with our content from our email streams, since we have very enhanced analytics, we can tailor our conversations to that. So majority of time we spend investing into our email marketing comms because we have that data and we know.
Right, okay. And any solutions with the traffic that you're getting?
If you can find one, you can tell me, please.
Okay, all right. I'll be knocking your door, selling it to you. No, it sounds good. So that's the story with lead scoring. Now, when it comes to organizing the content, right? And you talked about the funnel, but is there a methodology? I know you got another slide that I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, if you can bring it up. It's kind of a bit more in depth of the content, like how we brief our content. A piece of work we're doing at the moment is how we group our content. So at the moment, you come to our website, it has every single blog. There's no order behind it. So when we serve related content as well, it's not exactly related content. So what we're looking at doing is grouping our content under 6 key themes, because we know if someone's engaging with that theme, then we can tailor our content to that audience again. This is kind of a bit more the second tier of the content strategy. Like, what's the objective of the content? For us, it's to be a customer-inspired brand and a market leader. What's the tactical goal? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to retain? Are you trying to create brand awareness? Are you trying to drive acquisition? Content type, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to educate, inspire, inform? Are you trying to validate? Again, this differs across our pieces of content as well, and it will differ for every audience. What's the objective you're trying to achieve? Are you trying to build brand awareness? Are you trying to drive interest via our knowledge and expertise? Like we're lucky at ActivePipe because we have some people that are very well respected. Our CTO is a doctor and has got a doctorate in computer science. So in the technology circle, he's very well respected. So he can impart his knowledge and expertise on those people. Do you want to raise awareness? Do you want to talk about ActivePipe products? Do you want to talk about news? Do you want to talk about PR? What do you want to do? And do you want to, ultimately validation is, do you want to provide the reassurance they're doing the right thing, they're making the right decision for their business? What's the role of the brand as well? Is it to start a conversation? Is it to give you valuable content that you can glean insights from? Is it to share stories of success? Everyone loves a story of success. I know that if someone's doing something really well, I want to know why and how. Ultimately, our case studies play that part. And underpinning all of that is to build an online presence that supports the needs of our customers. So why are we doing this? What's the objective? How does it all come together? And ultimately, it's a customer-centric, customer-led approach, because we want to make sure we're adding value to our customers. I don't care about 99% of the world. I care about the 1% who are our customers and our potential customers, and that's how we optimize and create those efficiencies again, because we're focused and very narrow-minded. We call it the blinkers, the horse blinkers.
Right.
So we focus.
And that's sorry, I've got another question that's coming up about that, but do you want to
No,
anything else?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, and okay, so being laser focused when it comes to your customer, right? And I think that at the very beginning comes from defining your ideal customer and then your persona.
Correct.
How do you go about doing that and coming down to, these are our personas? What does that journey look like for you when you're starting from scratch of developing those personas?
It's difficult to start from scratch. Depending on your industry, we know who our personas are. We know who our core audience is, so it was easy for us. We paid an agency to help us with that work. So our creative/strategic agency is Fenton Stevens. They helped us build out our full brand positioning piece, our 4 key points of what our business stands for, and ultimately our personas and how we should be talking to those personas across the customer journey. So we have full customer journey maps for every single one of our personas, how they're feeling, what they're thinking, what are their motivations, what are their fears at every stage of that process. So when we talk to them, either via content or via a sales conversation, we can tailor our conversation to resonate and to alleviate those fears or to talk to those motivations. So we know that a big brand, they want to cost out, they want to make their marketing easier, they have fears about implementation. So we talk to those fears and we alleviate those worries by our content showing what we can do and how we substantiate that. Persona is different across every single industry and every single business. It's a very difficult one to start, but really you just need to be very focused on who you're talking to. It's very tempting to get caught up in all the bells and whistles. I'd love to do TV, I'd love to do radio, but ultimately it's a waste of time for us because, again, we don't want to sell to everyone in this room. I want to sell to the one person who's a real estate principal. So you've got to be very focused on what you do, and that's how you create those efficiencies and really get yourself going. Because if you try to do too much too soon, you'll fall down.
Yeah, that's really amazing, and I think it's a mistake, or it's a path that a lot of startups go down and say, you know what, our product is for everyone, and we're everybody should buy that. Now, with regards to coming up with those personas, is and you mentioned you worked with an agency, and you're absolutely right. It's fascinating when you come across these items that you never thought about. Fear of implementation. If you're starting a company, you wouldn't even maybe you would think about it, but it's hard to come up with that hey, we need to talk about fear of implementation when we're doing that, when we're approaching that customer. Was there any other interesting insights that have come out of your creation of your personas that you guys were like, wow, we didn't even think about that?
Yeah, so my advice would be to involve your customers. So we sense checked our personas with our customers, we sense check it in presentations, we sense check it in meetings. Our personas are perfect. It's incredible because we've sense checked it and we've tested it. I watch like a video of customer meetings when we pitch. We know that the CTO will be really receptive, but he'll worry about implementation. The CMO is the blocker. They hate it unless it's their idea. So we see that in real time. Like literally, I go to meetings and I will speak to the CMO differently because I know how they'll react. So we test that. So my advice would be to invite your customers in and actually understand what their motivations and fear are. It may cost you some product, it may cost you some time, it may cost you some money, but it's a worthwhile exercise. And it's probably a lot cheaper than paying an agency, in all honesty, as well.
Yep.
But you need to test it and you need to refine it. You won't get it the first time. It takes time and it takes testing. And you'll find little things along the way. And then once you get a little insight, you can test it and test it and test it, and then refine it. Once you have your personas sorted, roll them out across the business and get your staff to test it as well. Because your staff are the point of contact. They will know what resonates. I know what resonates from a sales perspective because our sales team have told me. We asked them, we interviewed them, we talked to them about what they were finding when they have their customer engagements. We know what our corporate guys, what their fears are because we invited them in. We take them out for lunch. We talk to them about how we can help them build their business. They think we're taking them out for lunch, but actually we're gleaming all these learnings about how we can sell to their competitors. So it's all about testing and developing those over time. It takes time and it takes effort, but it's a worthwhile exercise.
Yeah, it's a very dirty. It's not dirty, but it's extremely time consuming to do those interviews. I mean, it's the same thing for us when we, our main customer is B2B technology firms, and what you always see in the sector that we're operating, they're for influencers, CFO, CEO, or the founder, head of sales, and then a marketing coordinator. And you got to take care of all four of them. In order to be able to have a successful relationship. Okay, I have another question about yourself and your journey in marketing and content. Looking back, what has been one experience or one resource that you came across that has really shaped your trajectory in this space and when it comes to marketing? That you would, it might have not been obvious at the time, but it was definitely very shaping.
I think for me it would be mentoring. So I've always been really lucky to have a mentor at work. So it started at ANZ. I had one of the senior marketing managers who I was friendly with. He became my mentor. He helped guide, he helped shape. He was a point of contact for advice. And he really took me under his wing and helped me to manage the very complex political corporate environment. And I've always had a mentor. I've had one at ANZ, I've had one at Spark, I've had one at NAB, I have one now. Particularly, it's not usually someone that you report to, not someone even in your organisation, it's someone that you aspire to be like, that you trust, and that will actually give up their time for you. I think that's probably the best investment I've ever had, is giving up my time to really try to build those relationships with my mentors, because the huge amount of value you glean off it from their years of experience is completely invaluable. Plus just doing things, just trial and error, I think is the number one learning that I can give, is you don't know if it's working if you don't try it. So how do you, if you don't fail, you don't succeed.
Gotcha. Do you got a way that you would approach people when you want them to mentor you?
It can go a number of ways. Ideally, if you know them, it's always better if you have a personal relationship with them, because they're going to be much more receptive to saying yes. It may be someone that you see around work that you aspire to be like. But the reality is, regardless of your role or your title, you're a person at the end of the day. You know, the CEO of NAB will walk around and it's like he's a celebrity, but then he goes home to his family at the end of the day. He's a person, he has dinner, he watches Home and Away, whatever. So if you need to talk to him like a person and treat him like a person, and then they'll give you the time in return. But ultimately they've got to have that motivation to do it. There's no point of having a mentor if they're not going to invest the time in you, and they've got to want to do it as well. So it's all about positioning. Again, it's how you approach them and why. Why should they want to help you? A lot of people are very receptive to it. I mentor a number of people, particularly people who have just approached me and they've said, like particularly coordinators that are going through the corporate world, they know that I've done that and they want to know how they can improve and do certain things, and I'm more than happy to do it because I've had that experience. 9 times out of 10, people that mentor have had a mentor as well. Some still do. My mentor has a mentor. So, you know, you've just got to ask.
Amazing. Right. I have one question that I forgot about content. We kind of I asked this question, but I wanted to talk about distribution, right? Mm-hmm. And you said that is one of the elements that your ActivePipe is just developing right now. What have you seen working for you other than the email list, right? So you mentioned the email list is working very well, but other than the email list, what is one of the channels that is working for you guys, and how did you come across it?
So LinkedIn works really well for us, particularly because we play in the B2B space. Facebook, you need to know your channel and you need to know the audience that plays in that channel. We sell to principals that are on LinkedIn. We also want agents to influence their principal who are predominantly on Facebook. So we run different distribution strategies depending on where our audience is and why they should care. It's a balancing act as well. It's hard to know. We find that social proof works really well on Facebook because it's very digestible. The things we're exploring now with Tiger Pistol is sort of the lean forward or lean back social model. So lean forward, like you think lean forward, you have 5 to 10 seconds when you may be waiting for a coffee, you might be doing something. Lean back's when you're on the couch, you're watching TV, you have the time to actually go through content. We will never run articles on Facebook because we know people won't engage with it. We know that they engage with LinkedIn, and we test and we model that out as well, and we project our engagement. So we know that if we're running a post for X amount of dollars and it's getting X amount of engagement, we have that scalability. So we test that scalability. Do we amplify certain pieces of content to certain audiences? But again, it's around knowing your audience and why you want to talk to them and what's that value exchange. So for us, Facebook works really well for agents, for the C-suite, LinkedIn, obviously. What works really well for us is when we leverage our partners to gain that amplification. So for example, if we did a piece of content around social media with Tiger Pistol, we would tag in them, obviously, we'd tag in the contributor from their end who has their own network, and that's how you get your reach.
Gotcha. It's amazing that you also mentioned LinkedIn, and I think LinkedIn is going through an extreme transformation. I don't know if this is a new thing that you guys are testing with LinkedIn, but you know, we're obviously putting a lot of investment in LinkedIn, and a lot of our clients are looking into it. Is LinkedIn and focusing on LinkedIn is a new development for ActivePipe, or has it been there for years?
We've always played in LinkedIn, but at the moment we're optimizing. We know that people are on LinkedIn because they want to get learnings, they want to engage, they want to actually get something from the content, whereas on Facebook it's very sharp, digestible, time-killing content. A CEO will not be on Facebook to read a thought leadership blog about building a business. So we know that because we've tested it and we've seen how horribly it failed. So we deviate our channels. We also write our content a number of different ways for channel as well. So we might do a generic piece that goes across all channels, but we'll write it very differently in terms of our hook copy to pull them in. And we'll know where that engagement's coming from because we tag and track everything.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you brought up LinkedIn, but are there any other new trends that you're seeing in the content space right now that gets you very excited?
Yeah, definitely a lot of influencer stuff. Not particularly for us, but for the big retail and big brands, influencers are huge. So you may have heard about the company Tribe. They're doing some amazing work, and they're putting their content back in the hands of the consumer, and it's very low cost, and it gets a lot of cut through. We don't play in the influencer space because we have a very niche audience. And you think from an agent's perspective, if they're using a piece of technology that's getting them all these sales, why would they tell their competitors about it? Whereas if you are selling a beer, then people talk about it quite openly because there's so many different brands out there. We're starting to play in the more ambassador space, so we know that there's very sort of certain hotshot people that are well respected. We want to partner with them to create that sort of association. I think to answer your question, influencers is huge. If it's leveraged properly, it can be very low cost, and you can get a lot of value from it rather easily as well.
Okay, gotcha. If you wanted to, if somebody comes to you and they're just starting in the content space, and you wanted to give them an advice, they're asking where to start, whether that's a book, it's an online course, it's a blog that you regularly go through, where would I start with content marketing? What would be your suggestion?
You've got to find what you enjoy doing. Like, if you don't enjoy writing, don't write. You know, you got to know where your audience is playing and what are they engaging with. If you're trying to sell a dress, you know that they are going to be heavily engaged with Instagram and influencers. So start to play in that space. It's really about where is your audience and why should they care.
Gotcha. I totally get. I think I maybe posed my question wrong. Let's say I'm just starting, right, and I want to learn more about content marketing, and I want to know how to learn more about it. You know, is there a book that you would recommend? Is there a course that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I've got one of my staff doing an ADMA course, content marketing strategy.
Okay.
She said it's hugely valuable. My suggestion would be just to learn, to look at brands that you aspire to be like, that are doing it well, and you can glean those learnings of what they're doing and why. Do your research and invest the time in doing that research, and invest in yourself as well. I think courses are a great way to get a great overview, very high level, very basic stuff, but it helps, and then you can start delving into it more. There's a number of books, there's a number of free resources, there's a number of people that play in the content marketing space that do it really well. So there's like so much resources out there you can get your hands on very easily and very cheaply. So I'd say just start to learn and start to figure out what works for you. People learn differently and people discover things differently. So I'd just say just do your work and do your research and find out what you like doing.
Gotcha. Awesome. And lastly, the question that I have is, are there gaps? I mean, you travel quite a lot, and you know, for us to get you over here, we had to coordinate between you, trip to, I don't know, Singapore and London and Austin. Are there gaps in the market, in the content market in Australia that you see, and there are differences between, you know, what you see in London, UK, and the US? Have you noticed anything?
I don't think anyone in the small business market is doing it really well, so I think there's a huge opportunity for that. In New Zealand, there's a company called Unfiltered. Their CEO is a 21-year-old guy, and he basically interviews business leaders, executives, Richard Branson, for example, and he posts that content on his website, and businesses glean learnings off that. He does that incredibly well. So here's the New Zealand market stitched up. Right. So no one does that really well in Australia. I'd say they'll be over here very shortly. Their focus is the US at the moment, but no one does it really well. I think Telstra do it quite well. There's a few other brands that do it well in their niche, particularly around the influencer space, because again, it's low cost and it drives that value they're looking for. But there's huge opportunity for all brands if they can bring the whole picture together and they can ultimately track and make those educated decisions off the back of their tracking and reporting to actually win.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, look, before I open up for questions, because I'm sure there's a couple of them, what is the best way for people to reach you if they want to know more and they want to find out more? What is the best way for them to reach you?
Just hit me up on LinkedIn.
All right. Yeah. Great. Nick Jeffery, huh? Fantastic. All right. Now, do we have questions? I would love to take some questions before we wrap up. We've got one over there, please.
Before you mentioned that you do, I think, 2 to 5 content pieces a fortnight. What do you classify as a content piece? Is it an article or a video? Is it a collection?
Sorry, I'm just going to repeat the question because of the recording. So the question is, if you're doing a content piece, what really is a content piece? Is that...
Yeah, so for us it's written content, so 3 to 5 articles or blogs a week we have all our social streams running concurrently as well. So, and that would be an execution point for us. So we may do a blog, we would send it out via email, we'd have it on our website, we'd distribute it via Facebook. But then we don't forget about our lead gen. So our lead gen's a completely other stream for us, and particularly on our social channels, because that's where we glean all our leads to pull through our pipeline. At any point in time, there's numerous campaigns and various pieces of comms going out from our automated nurture journeys as well, which we're always optimizing. It might just be a tweak of a word or a piece of content or a new video. Really for us, it depends on the capacity of my design team and what we're doing and why. So I think 3 to 5, to answer your question, would be written content, but at the same time, we're also trying to do everything else. So it's a bit of a balancing act.
And what team size is that working on?
So I have 4 content marketers, I have 2 or 3 in my design team, I have a full social agency, which is Tiger Pistol, with 4 account managers. We lean on Fenton Stevens for some creative as well. And then really we have a social copywriter, which I'm recruiting for at the moment. And then a junior designer that does all our marketing collateral. So everyone knows their role, and we have a really efficient workflow and a handover point. So someone would write a blog, for example, they'll hand it over to the copywriter who will write their headline and the webhooks. Then they'll pass it over to design. So we have that workflow so we can optimize our processes as well. But you can start small. At the start of the year, we had one. We had one chick that would write all our blogs, even before I joined, all our blogs, all our content. She'd post it on social. So it doesn't matter on size. The team size lets you scale. Particularly, we run 3 different geographies, so I need that scalability. And we try to be smart around our content. We won't write content for one geography. We'll write content that will resonate globally, and it can be certain words and certain phrases. And you can also duplicate content and tweak it depending on your audience if you have control over those distribution points. I know that my corporate audience will only see content that I send them via email. It doesn't live on our website, so I can control that as well.
Right, okay. Any other questions? Yep.
You might have mentioned it, but how far in advance do you plan your content?
Usually a
That's a good
fortnight.
question.
Usually a fortnight.
Far in
It
advance.
lets you be flexible and nimble as well. I don't want to be bound by having to do things from a certain time. We don't have time pressures. We don't have deadlines because we dictate our own deadlines. I don't like stress. I don't like my team being stressed. So we're not bound by a set number of articles a week. We like to have a cadence that we follow, but if something doesn't happen for one reason, particularly if you have partners and other brands that you're depending on. For example, I'm doing an article with the CEO of Ray White at the moment. It took 2 weeks for him to sign it off. We wanted to distribute last week, so it held up our campaign for a week. So we try to plan enough in advance to allow that breathing room. And as I mentioned, we also cache content. If something doesn't come through at the right time, we have something up our sleeve we can use. So we always try to sort of backfill our content.
You don't do like months in advance.
It depends on the capacity of the team. Sometimes they can churn out a piece of content really quickly. Sometimes it might take longer. If they can do it quickly, then we get them to do more and more and more.
What would be the example of pieces that are really quick for you for your team, and what are the ones that you would be spending a lot of time on?
It depends on the level of ability of the writer. So, for example, one of my content writers has a really great relationship with our CEO. So she almost knows how he talks. She's got his tone perfectly. She knows what he will say. So if he writes a blog or a ghost writes a blog for him around building a business and creating culture, 9 times out of 10 it's perfect from the start. If she was to write something about a topic she doesn't know about, it will take research. She'd have to interview me. So if we was talking about social media, for example, she'd have to interview me a couple of times. She'd have to validate that with our partner. So it just takes longer. So we play to the strengths and weaknesses of our individual writers as well, and we know what will work as well. But it's a balancing act because you want to keep them motivated and interested as well. I don't want them just writing about the same shit over and over because they'll just hate it and then eventually they'll leave. So we try to mix it up and we try to give those opportunities for them to try new things, but we factor that into our planning as well because I know that will take longer.
So does that mean there are pieces that you would plan for a little bit more in advance than 2 weeks?
Yeah, it depends on what it is. If it comes under that reactive market context, like we might write around Christmas and we can start planning for Christmas now because we know Christmas is Christmas. We know spring mortgages is a hugely topical time for agents and we know spring is spring. So we can plan those sort of moments in advance. We know like there's a sales cycle, and we know that during winter, real estate sort of plateaus out. So we know we have a planning cycle there where we can actually tone down our content because we don't see that engagement. So when it comes into spring, when they're more engaged and more receptive, we can go hard.
Sounds good. Okay. Got a question? Yeah.
You mentioned that you use LinkedIn as one of your spaces. You actually use the paid social LinkedIn to boost your content, and what experiences there?
Yeah, so we boost our content as well. We don't use LinkedIn for advertising as such. We find that doesn't work at all. And again, it's knowing where your audience want to receive that content and engage with. Imagine if you're a CEO of a company and then you get pushed an ad, you'd be like instantly switch off. And again, it's about adding that value. We boost our content. Things we're exploring now is Instagram story lead forms, a lot of Facebook lead forms as well. LinkedIn's more, we don't usually have call to action in our content on LinkedIn. It's all around creating that brand awareness and that positioning and building our individual executives' own personal brand as well. So when they have that phone call, when they have that conversation, there's a perception of them in the marketplace, which and 9 times out of 10 it's not the same. We have a perception that we're a much bigger business than we are, and we have a perception our CEO and our leaders are these amazing, amazing guys, which they are, but you know, it's amplified 10 times because of our content.
Yeah, that's really cool. We're going to have a program specifically around LinkedIn advertising. So it's a very exciting space. But just to touch on that, you know, one of the things that we're seeing with LinkedIn quite a lot is that mid-funnel advertising works really well. So if you're just doing awareness, or if you're doing, you know, the top at the very top that's just posting stuff, you don't generate as much leads specifically. And if you're doing a hard sell, it usually doesn't work. So it's always about, you know, producing a piece of content that you're promoting, or, you know, you give an ebook or white paper. That's the kind of stuff that's worked well.
Yeah, and it depends on what you're trying to do, right? If you're trying to position yourself as a thought leader, you can write a blog and put it on LinkedIn, and then you drive that lead to your website, and then you can remarket, and then you have the brand awareness plus the thought leadership. So it can play a number of roles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, awesome. Please.
Yeah, you just highlighted to track your numbers, otherwise there's no point in doing anything. Just getting into like tracking all of that, where would you kind of recommend where to start? Because if you've got maybe a smaller business, a smaller budget, obviously you can go really crazy with that sort of stuff. Where would you be
it depends on the channel you're going to play in. I'd honestly, if you're running an omni-channel marketing strategy, you need to track every single channel. You need to do a cost per acquisition. You need to do a cost per lead. Depends on the role of the content. If it's brand awareness, it's more difficult to attribute in an ROI metric. For us, we have all our email marketing metrics. We have our clicks. We have our click to opens. We have our Facebook. We have our awareness, our reach, our engagement. It depends on where you're trying to play in. Again, you need to pick your channels that you think are working for you, and you need to test and optimize. It's going to be different for everyone in this room, I'd say, depending what you should do. But again, just start small and test. Like you could test a LinkedIn campaign, and then you could test a Facebook campaign, and you could compare. It depends where your audience is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's really hard to measure content ROI, right? I'm not sure how the conversations with the CFO goes. You know, when the CFO is like, all right, we're producing all this content. Tell me what is the ROI? Have you been able to come up with metrics that you look at specifically, and you say, I don't know if you can share, but that you look at specifically and look?
Yeah, so it's an incredibly difficult one. We had our board meeting this afternoon, which went for 6 hours. And that was one of the topics of it. How are we tracking our brand awareness and our ROI? Again, it's incredibly difficult because I want people, so when we pick up the phone, they know who we are, because it makes it much easier sales. But then how do you attribute that to an actual lead? And especially if you're going from a last click attribution model, they may have been exposed to 4 different brand awareness before they see a call to action led ad, and then they actually come through that funnel. So again, it's incredibly difficult. I think it's more just what's the purpose. If you're doing a brand awareness ad, are you driving people to your website so you could remarket? Are you trying to actually get them to do something, as complete a form or complete an inquiry form? It depends on what that role of that content is and what you're trying to achieve off the back of it too.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah.
Do you have a thought process around determining what content gets up and what doesn't? Is it your gut feeling? Is it more a leadership team?
Yes. Yeah, so really I want to empower my staff to drive those topics. So we always run a retro as well. What have we done over the last 3 months? What's the content themes we've talked about? Who has talked about those themes? Can we mix things up? We want to keep things interesting. We want to keep it fresh. Ultimately, it comes down to gut feel and knowing what works. Again, it comes back down to tracking and reporting because you know what works because you've tracked it and you've reported on it. My team compare pieces of content for certain themes against each other, and we know that our articles around culture and building a business perform much more than other pieces of content, so we play up on those pieces of content at certain points. We really leverage our PR to amplify that content as well. So it's all around picking the right time and the opportunity to do it. If we're doing a big PR campaign, we know we'll get a lot of organic traffic, and then the next piece we'll do will be a brand association or building a business because we know that gets the most reach. So we warm people up with PR, then we push them through with content. But it's really about empowering your staff and keeping things interesting because you want them to be motivated to write more content, and they've got to enjoy doing it or else they just stop caring.
Please.
You say you highlighted that story of success. You still say that like to read about humble beginnings of the company and how it started.
Yeah, completely. And this is what I push very heavily on our CEO, who is our founder. It's about the person behind the business. We don't even want to be a faceless technology company. We want to be a family business that has started from a garage out in Essendon and now has grown into a global business. And we tell that story. Our CEO has a fantastic story himself. When he was an apprentice mechanic, he bought the business at 16 and then turned it into a multi-million-dollar franchise.
Does that have that on the website?
No, so that's something that we're in disagreement on. I want to have an about us section. I want to humanise our brand. I want to promote our executives as people. Yeah. We're a business of people. We have a very diverse culture in our business, which makes us the business we are. So I want to promote that. He doesn't. So we're fighting. We've been fighting for months. We'll continue to fight for months. My approach is 100%. You should definitely be doing it because, again, it humanises your business. It adds a face to it as well, especially if you're the CEO or you're the leader. It inspires people as well. You have your own story that you can tell. Storytelling works. We know that storytelling and humanising stories resonates with people because at the end of the day, people are people.
Yeah, I think there's...
Oh, for sure.
Awesome.
Especially around the Aussie battler, trials and tribulations. And when we do our case studies, we don't talk about when it's all roses as well. We talk around, we tried it, we fucked it up, we worked on it, there was failings, we learned, and now it's all getting better. And because then it's actually believable and it resonates. Whereas if you just talk around, this is awesome, people are like, you guys are full of shit. We intentionally do our video case studies really raw. We don't over polish them. We don't get full video production because we know that people will just think it's a paid advertorial, think of an infomercial. That's a paid actor. We don't ever want our case studies to be thought like that. So it's about keeping that raw and having that human element.
Gotcha. I think we've got a question right there. Yeah, please.
Yeah, you spoke earlier about the nurturing process through remarketing. I was just wondering, how long does that process take from kind of when someone jumps on board to when you hopefully make a phone call?
It differs drastically across depending on the persona and the audience. Particularly our C-suite conversations or our enterprise conversations would be anywhere from 1 to 3 to 4 months. An agent may be 7 to 10 days. And it depends on how you push that content and how you actually dictate that conversation. We know if someone's on a pricing page, they're pretty keen. So we should be giving our sales team that opportunity to pick up the phone and treat it as a warm lead. So it's about you being proactive with those leads as well. If you let people dawdle on the case study page, they're almost there, but why aren't you pushing them to get them over? Everyone needs a gentle hurry along it sometimes. So it depends on how proactive we are and how proactive our sales team are. Again, it would differ for every business. But again, I think it would be about being proactive and actually making your own moves, opposed to waiting for the customer to make a decision themselves, because you'll see them dropping off.
Yeah, right. So if I'm an identified lead and I'm on your pricing page for too long, I'm going to get a call, or at least an email.
You should see something if we know who you are.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. All right. Cool. Yep, please.
Yeah, I wanted, I don't know, like, I wanted to know, like, how can you define or just relate with the content, like being more human and having more like a social impact, and how can you just go still through leads and through all like this very capital way of matter to say it, and this also social impact that also it has. So I think it's very important how you say it, like very humanous and it as well. But I think like, I don't know, like how can you really keep on the track and still like going on with it?
It's all about the tone and how you speak to your audience. We never talk around ourselves. We talk around like empowering our customers, creating better experiences, enabling our customers to facilitate amazing experiences for their customers. It's not about being arrogant, it's not about being look at us. So it's a balancing act as well. You'll find what works for you, particularly if we talk around building a business and culture. Again, it goes down to the humans behind the business, or else you just fall down. Because then people stop caring. They know that it's not you actually talking. So it's a balancing act. It's hard. I'd say it all comes down to the tone and the language you use, and being humble at the end of the day as well.
Okay. All right, 2 more questions before we. Yeah, please.
I've got a question in relation to your previous roles and working with like the millennial generation, banking and finance. What did you find kind of connected with that millennial audience around the bank?
None of the banks have nailed it. And honestly, like the banks live in an ignorant world. They think people care and they think people want to follow them on Facebook. No one gives a fuck. No, like, why would you want to follow your bank on Facebook? There needs to be that value exchange. People follow banks because they want discounts, they want offers, and they want prizes. So it's very difficult it's around that education as well. They more use content to learn about their customers and what stage in the life cycle they are. So, you know, if you're engaging with a piece of content around buying your first home, you've pretty much self-segmented yourself. So when the banker calls you, they can tailor their conversation. A lot of them are trying to play within the different media spaces. So with Junkie and Vice and all that, Westpac's got a big program with, I think, Vice at the moment. It's just trying to be cool. But again, they're not. They're never going to get it.
So what does work in, like if your target market is like a millennial market?
It's about what resonates with them. We know that, particularly I ran a big campaign for NAB around travel. We know that people travel to certain locations, so we play up on that in the imagery. We talk to them about what they actually care about. It's understanding who your customers are, what resonates with them, and how you should be speaking to them. So we know millennials, particularly around travel, they go to Thailand, they go to Bali, they go to New Zealand. So when we send them a piece of comms, we personalise it and tailor it. If you tell NAB that you're going overseas, they ask you which country you're going to, then you get an automated personalised email with that country image banner, and it talks through, you need some currency. If you're going to China, you need Chinese currency. You know, it's about creating that personalised experience at mass scale. I think what's working for the banks is their social content as well, their sponsorships as well really resonate. And the banks are all very similar in their offerings, so it's hard for them to differentiate. I think ANZ's doing a good job in certain places. It's around finding those pockets of information and those fears and motivations and using content to talk to it. ANZ did a big piece which was around when you get your first job, they know that's when you're more likely to get your first bank account. So it was all around, you've got the job, now get the account. So they looked at their data and their insights to really find that learning, and then they pushed it very heavily, which worked really well for them.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Just wasn't a sustainable model.
Yeah, I think in the financial sector, obviously, you know, companies that are doing really well would be, you know, an example would be Spaceship in Sydney. I mean, they're in a little bit of a heat at the moment, but with the whole super space, but I think they've done quite an interesting.
And you just need to know what resonates. Like, you know that millennials are really price sensitive. They care about paying fees, so don't charge them fees. They care about making the most about their money, so give them tips around budgeting and savings, and actually add value and help them, opposed to just trying to push products.
Yeah, cool. And one, one there.
Do you have any advice on reaching foreign markets that perhaps might prefer some content in their own language, and there's also cultural considerations like with the industry?
It's incredibly difficult. So we have a presence in the US, the UK and Australia. The US market's completely different. They have different language, they have different tone, even certain words as well. Sometimes we get caught up on that and we get pulled up on it. We're lucky because we have a US team, so we sense check all our content through them. My advice would be very, very careful in terms of all your QA and assurance. If you're writing in Chinese, get someone who can speak Chinese to fully proof it. Don't trust them on their proofing, get someone else to proof it as well. I've seen experiences where there's been certain slight tweaks in languages and words have been translated wrong, and it's created a horrible customer experience. But again, it goes back down to what's your persona, how you should be talking to them in what tone and style as well. I would avoid translation is my advice.
Very true. Very true. I mean, just on that note, we have one of our offerings is targeting to the Chinese audience, right? And at the very start, when we started that and offering it to some of our clients, we were we were thinking that, hey, it's going to be all right. We probably have one or two people who speak Chinese on the team, and that's going to be great. But that definitely turned out it didn't backfire, but it wasn't working. So it wasn't until we brought in someone who was a specialist in the Chinese industry and marketing to the Chinese industry, who was running that team, that we start getting results. So it's having someone with context and not only context, marketing background and context, which is sometimes becomes harder and harder. Is quite key. All right. Well, look, I really appreciate it. This was a really awesome talk. I want to again. So if anyone is interested, they can reach out to you on LinkedIn. I want to also thank everybody for coming to the event. We please hang around after we're done, and would love to meet up with a couple of people and have a good chat. But definitely check us out at our next event as well. So Jessica Hackett is talking at our next event, and she's talking about a complete design of a complete funnel, and from all perspectives, from the very beginning of generating those leads all the way to retention. She's the CMO of Sidekicker, which is kicking some big goals at the moment. But on that note, please help me thank Nick for joining us. Thanks a lot, Nick.